the greatest survival story in human history. Some stories feel almost impossible to believe, not because they involve superheroes or magic, but because they show what real human beings are capable of when there's nothing left but courage, faith, and the will to survive. This is one such story. A mission that began as an adventure, but evolved into one of the most dramatic survival stories ever told. This is the true story of Sir Ernest Shackleton and his legendary endurance expedition, a journey across the deadliest place on Earth, Antarctica. It was the year 1914. The world was on the brink of World War I, but far from the chaos in Europe, a bold expedition was quietly preparing for history. Sir Ernest Shackleton, a renowned British explorer, had one dream: to be the first man to cross Antarctica from coast to coast through the South Pole. He believed in exploration, in pushing human limits, and in inspiring others through courage. He gathered 28 men, scientists, sailors, carpenters, and cooks, and set sail on a ship called the Endurance. The ship was strong, the crew was ready, but nature had other plans. As the Endurance reached the Weddell Sea, giant sheets of sea ice closed in around the ship. They were trapped, frozen in place. The ice was too thick to break, too strong to escape. At first, the crew stayed calm. They believed the ice would eventually melt. They passed the time by playing games, reading, and even celebrating holidays. But as weeks turned into months, it became clear the ship wasn't going anywhere. By October 1915, after nearly 10 months trapped, the pressure of the ice began crushing the Endurance. Wood cracked like gunshots. The hull bent and groaned. Then, the ship broke apart. Shackleton gave the order: abandon ship. And just like that, they were left on the ice, thousands of miles from civilization, no radio, no rescue, just pure frozen wilderness. Imagine living on ice for months, no tents, no warm shelter, just what you can carry from a sinking ship. Temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius, and winds howled like monsters. They set up camp on a drifting iceberg, eating whatever they could hunt, mainly seals and penguins. They played music, told stories, and Shackleton worked hard to keep everyone hopeful. He rotated tasks, kept routines. He knew that the moment morale broke, survival would too. And all the while, the ice floe was drifting slowly, but not towards safety. Finally, after 5 months, the ice cracked beneath them. It was time to move. In April 1916, they launched 3 small lifeboats into the freezing sea. It was their only chance. For 7 days, they battled monstrous waves, freezing spray, and exhaustion. Some suffered frostbite. Others hallucinated from lack of sleep. But finally, they saw land. They had reached Elephant Island, a remote, barren rock in the Antarctic. It wasn't a rescue, but it was solid ground. The first they'd touched in over 497 days. But no ships came this far. No one even knew they were alive. So Shackleton made a choice. With 5 trusted men, Shackleton set out again, this time in a 7-meter wooden boat, crossing the deadly Drake Passage. It was a 1,300-kilometer journey through the roughest seas on Earth. Waves the size of buildings, storms that flipped whaling ships, freezing rain, ice in their boots, and a boat that barely held together. They bailed water every hour, ate moldy biscuits, and steered by stars hidden behind clouds. For 16 terrifying days, they sailed, and somehow they reached South Georgia Island, but they landed on the wrong side. To reach help, they now had to cross the island's unexplored mountain range on foot. No map, no trail, no rest. Shackleton and 2 men walked for 36 hours straight, through snow, cliffs, and glaciers. And then, finally, they saw it. The lights of a whaling station. The men inside the station couldn't believe what they saw. 3 ghostly figures, half dead, covered in ice and dirt. But Shackleton asked just one thing: "Can you rescue my men?" He didn't rest. He didn't even celebrate. He immediately began planning their return. It took 4 rescue attempts. Ice blocked them again and again, but on the 4th try, Shackleton reached Elephant Island. And there, after 128 days apart, his men were still alive. Every single one. Not a single death. After more than 500 days, in the Antarctic wilderness, they had all survived. This wasn't just survival. This was leadership. This was faith. This was endurance, in every sense of the word. Shackleton's mission may have failed on paper, but in saving every man's life, he achieved something far more powerful than glory. His story reminds us that hope is never lost, not in storms, not in ice, not even in the darkest moments. So when your life feels stuck, when you feel lost or hopeless, remember, you come from a legacy of explorers, survivors, and leaders. If they could endure the impossible, you can survive your storm too. This was the greatest survival story in human history. And its greatest lesson? Sometimes the strongest force in the world isn't muscle. It's the will to not give up. In today's world, we idolize leaders who are bold. But Shackleton was more than bold. He was selfless. He didn't conquer Antarctica, but he conquered fear, hopelessness, and impossible odds, not for glory, but for his crew. In an era of war and ego, Shackleton showed what leadership really means. Sacrifice, courage, and keeping your word, no matter the cost. Even today, his expedition is studied in business schools and military academies as the gold standard of crisis leadership. We often hear stories of those who reach the top, but few about those who refuse to let others fall. Ernest Shackleton didn't make history by reaching the South Pole. He made history by bringing everyone home.